Welcome to the Antlered Crown podcast, where we discuss brews, witchcraft, spirituality, and more.
We hope through conversation we can continue to learn something new from ourselves and each other.
Today, we will be drinking some
Butterscotch schnapps.
Butterscotch schnapps beer, if you will, if you please.
Then we're going to talk more about deconstructing from religion and how we can support fledgling witches.
So come on in.
Beyond the weather and the marsh, there is a whisper in the dark through the tides of disarray, where wisdom knows the way. If you listen very still, there are answers to the endless, where the ancient pulses deep of the memories you keep.
Welcome to the Antlered Crown podcast. I am Elwyn, and I'm a hedge witch.
And I'm Amanda, the Antlered Queen, and we are so excited to be speaking to the Bearded Baldy.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Oh, I am wonderful. I am, with all sincerity, very, very honored and humbled to be here.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Right, go on in.
What are you drinking today?
I have my tea,
Yes.
my Paris tea from Harney and Sons,
Ooh.
and then I have a very fancy cup of ice water.
Wow.
Nice.
I like the Bob's Burger stickers.
Yeah.
That's great.
Thank you. Wait, hang on. There's
Ooh, an Antlered Crown
Oh,
sticker.
oh.
Ayo. The vibe.
gotta
Should we talk
represent.
Yeah, dang. Yes, you do. Should we talk about how we know the Bearded Baldy?
If you like.
Should we give some background and some history, some context to this episode, or should we just leave
Just
people
leave it.
guessing?
Let
Like-
all wonder.
We don't even know who the Bearded Baldy is.
I don't know.
It's deep hidden lore.
Yes,
It's
I
lost
like
to the
that.
ages.
We're really good either way.
Yeah. Well, someone choose. I'm not good at making decisions.
Oh my god. Oh, no.
Flip a coin. Flip a coin.
Well, I don't know. When did you first find the Antlered Crown, and then when did
Oh,
you two connect?
Jesus. I honestly don't remember when I first started following Elwyn on TikTok. It was definitely TikTok first.
Yeah.
And since we're talking about deconstruction, mine started towards the end of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so it was probably sometime around the very end of 2020, the very beginning of 2021, when I started first following him on TikTok.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah. I'll wait for you to say something.
No.
Oh.
Well, and then you guys were in the Discord, and then we met in person.
We met in person.
Yes.
We did. We met.
And then we met in person again.
And then we met in person again.
Yeah,
I was dressed as Baby Spice the first time.
she was.
Yes. Yes. In the middle of Chattanooga.
Mm-hmm. And then we got lost. And I don't know what you guys did after I left.
Got unlost.
You got
basically.
Unlost. Yeah.
Very fun. Very fun.
That was good.
That was fun though.
That was fun.
That was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
That was brilliant. I just remember that we left you there. It was like, all right, bye. And you're like, this place is fine. And we both was like, I need to go to the bathroom. So do I. So it was like, we left you there. We went to the bathroom, and we saw the bathroom.
Oh no!
Instead of where the mirror should be, it was just a
Yeah.
hole that see straight into the women's bathroom.
I feel so pedo-y and
Where-
gross.
So I'm washing my hands, and I'm looking at this woman who's washing her hands, and I'm like, I don't look like that.
It was so off-putting.
It was so strange. And then you were like,
Jeez.
it's fine. This place is fine. And I'm looking around, I'm like, it's not fine. It's not fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we walked around a bit, and we kept walking for fear of stopping. To be completely honest with you,
Oh,
we was like, we're not entirely sure where we are. It's got very quiet around here. Let's just keep walking. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
And that's not my town, so I had no idea where we were at.
Brilliant.
And the second time we went to Mellow Mushroom
We
and
did go to
had
Mellow
a
Mushroom.
bomb ass pizza.
It was a good place.
Mhm.
Mhm.
great
We
pizza.
also enjoyed a Publix, which was a very fun grocery store.
It was. They do a lot of British style food. They do a lot of like British food. I was quite happily surprised.
Yeah,
Yeah. I bought digestive biscuits and hobnobs. Right.
great.
Okay.
Well,
I've got a lot of catching up to do. Holy shit.
How did your practice begin and how has your craft evolved?
So, my initial foray into witchcraft was actually, gosh, now it's almost about 20 years ago.
Mhm.
I was 18, 19 years old. I just graduated from high school. I was in college. I had sort of left the church after being raised in it and, was just disillusioned and young and angry and full of angst.
Mm.
Like you are when you're, 18, 19 years old
Yeah.
and think that
Yeah.
the world owes you something.
Mhm.
And I spent a couple of years looking for anything that felt right, anything that fit. I tried several different alternative religions. I tried no religion.
Mhm.
After a couple of years, I actually ended up going back to the church and was in the church until the end of 2020.
Right.
When I actually left everything behind for good and really began my deconstruction journey.
Mhm.
Um, Back then, the first time, I didn't really know what I was doing. Um,
Mhm.
I was working part time at a bookstore. There was a woman there who was a witch, and she kind of pointed me in the direction of a couple of books. She did a tarot reading for me, so that was my first real. And
Mm.
being in a bookstore, I had um, access to all these different books, and there was a big case full of tarot decks. I bought 2 or 3 of those. Again, not really knowing how they worked or anything about it, just buying all the shit that I could find. And it, like I said, I never really fully committed. It never
Mhm.
really. I was just so desperate to try to find any sort of semblance of something that made me feel connected. And
Mhm.
I tried witchcraft. I tried Buddhism. I tried uh, a couple of other different Eastern traditions, and just kind of dabbled here and there, and never really fully committed to anything.
Hmm.
And then when my when I really began my deconstruction, and I really dug deep, um, it kind of started. It kind of started more as a religion, looking for a religion, than it did looking for
Mm.
a sort of spiritual path. And I differentiate between those two a lot: religion
Mhm.
versus spirituality.
Mm.
Um, at the time, the thing that made the most sense to me was Norse paganism, because
Mhm.
it was on the rise. Everybody was talking about it. It
Yeah.
was like the it thing for people who were looking for some sort of alternative religion.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it seems really appealing. And then you get into it, and then you're like, oh God, it's full of racists.
Oh no.
Oh boy.
Oh. Yeah.
And so there's a lot to learn there. There's a lot to unlearn. Um, and when you're when you're coming from Christianity, which is a very
Mm.
white centered, patriarchal belief system,
Mm.
it's very easy, I think, for people to get caught up in some of that. I don't think all of the people who are in Norse paganism that have that racist mentality realize it, because it's so prevalent in Christianity that when they leave Christianity and latch onto that, it's like they can't see the forest for the trees, and the next thing you know, you're
Mm.
surrounded by, fascists and neo-Nazis, and you're like, "Holy shit, how the hell did I get here?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
My I mean, obviously, for the people who were listening to the podcast and not seeing this, I am
Right.
still wearing a Mjolnir necklace.
Mm.
The Norse gods and goddesses are still a part of who I am and my practice, but they're not so much the deities that I rely on
Mm.
when I'm performing magic, whether it's doing a spell or doing a divination or any sort of magic. They're not the ones that I lean on. They're still a part of my life, but that's
Mhm.
not really where my focus is.
Yeah.
When I found folk craft, folk
Mm.
witchcraft, low magic, the magic of the common people,
Mhm.
that was something that just clicked.
Right.
And I was able to just really grab onto that. And so that is really where, as now that I'm over over 2 years now into walking this path, as I started kind of, at the beginning just finding whatever I could,
Hmm.
and then as slowly started to narrow down, and now I've really got a good solid focus on that folk witchcraft. It's
Mhm.
specifically for me, being in East Tennessee, being in Appalachia.
Mhm.
When I started learning about Appalachian folk magic, its roots in European traditions, finding out that's where my family is from in northern England,
Mhm.
I really felt like that was home. It wasn't the appropriative misunderstanding culture of high magic where you're trying to harness these powers and bend them to your will, and you're stealing traditions from all these other practices. It was the magic of the land and the magic of the
Mm.
people. And
Right.
when you think about one of the definitions of pagan being of the land, looking at folk witchcraft to me was paganism in its purest form.
Yeah. I agree with you there. It is, I believe, the closest that we have to practice in the ancient world. When you see, even in the old days, folk practitioners, there is no presence about them. They are almost completely unassuming. They are very simple people, and they meld into their landscape. They are part of it. And it's very much the difference between, it's like, it sounds weird, it's like watching a duck on the water.
Mm.
You watch a duck on the water, and it's a simple, fluid thing. This thing is just buoyant and going along doing its thing. You don't think about the little legs that are going along underneath. It's just a very natural kind of flow it has to it. And when you stack that up against, especially in occultism, we have high magic and the likes of Crowley, obviously, and people like that. There is this whole thing of bending things to your will,
Mm.
enforcing things, having very strict constructs and very convoluted means of achieving something that these people before us as well just did simply, very simple. Just, well, why do if you were to show any of those grannies the things that they'll be like, well, why'd you do all those things for? What's with all the bells and that?
Yeah.
I could have done that. I could have done that in half the time in my kitchen,
Yeah.
And that's because it's true to what it is. It cuts out all that. It's based on the necessity, and it's working within the confines of a living life. It's not pretending to be anything other than someone living their life and practicing magic within it. You know, I think there's that idea of that when we put on the robes, because sometimes we need to, but when we put on the robes, when we get the ceremony sparkly daggers, when we have the special sash, those aren't the things that are us. It takes out the us from our working. And in folk practice, it isn't. It's about you. It exemplifies you and what works for you by your association and the way you live. Makes it very natural, very easy, very fluid kind of practice, doesn't it? And yeah, I agree completely with it. That's why I love it also. It's that it does click. It feels true in a way. It feels truer to something that was before than a lot of the things that are represented now.
Yeah.
Don't always sit well.
Very true.
Plus, who has the time? Who's got the
Yeah.
time to get out the robe and everything else every time I need to do
Truly.
a working? I
Honestly.
got to get to work. I got bills to pay. You know, I can't. I don't have this time.
Kids will be out of bed by the time I've got a robe out and done it. Drew a circle on the floor. Be like, the kids like, Dad, oh bugger.
I'm conjuring. Go back to bed. Go back to the shadows.
Oh my god.
Brilliant.
Earlier
Keep your
you
forked tongue behind your teeth.
Fool of a toque.
I was waiting for something like that. And it came.
It did.
It did. Earlier you mentioned that you have different definitions for religion and for spirituality. Can you share those with us?
Sure.
Okay.
So I would be delighted. So to me, and again, this is me, this is my personal opinion. This is my whatever, take it or leave it.
Right.
Religion has, among other things, it has a doctrine, it has a theology, a system of rules, not even necessarily do's and don'ts, but these are how we do. This is how this is done. If you want to be a part of this group, this is the way that you have to do things. A perfect example of that is Shinto, which is the indigenous religion of Japan. It is not a closed practice. Anyone can practice Shinto, whether you're Japanese or not, whether you live in Japan or not. However, there are specific ways that the deities in Shinto are honored. There are certain things that you have to have set up at your home altar. There are certain offerings that they accept. There are certain prayers that they accept. Very specific things that you have to do. To me, that is a religion.
Yeah.
A spirituality doesn't have to have those things. It doesn't have to have, granted, a religion doesn't have to have a deity either, but spirituality doesn't have to have deities. It doesn't have to have rules. It doesn't have to have a whole lot of structure. It is more natural to who we are as spiritual beings.
Yeah.
I know that there are people who are perfectly happy having no religion and no spirituality. There's a guy, and he's a very, very popular TikToker, Captain Dadpool. He's a very popular atheist TikToker. I know him personally. He and I used to go to church together. He went to the church that my spouse went to when we first met. I actually met him before I met her. He was going to Bible college near me, and I used to drive to his Bible college on a regular basis and hang out with him.
Okay.
So I've known him for a long time. He is now an atheist and is very happy being an atheist and doing what he does. And that's great for him. I don't know what his spirituality is, or even if he has one. And I know there are a lot of people who are happy without having a spirituality. I cannot feel fully whole in myself without a spirituality. I don't have to have a religion. I don't need a religion. But as a spiritual person, someone who is connected to spirit, I need to have a spirituality.
Right.
I need to have that cognizant awareness that there is more to me than what you see in front of you. And so that's kind of how I differentiate between religion and spirituality.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I like what you said about the rigidity. Rigidity? Rigidity? Is that a word?
It is.
When did you lose yours?
Fuck off.
What,
No, go on.
did you just ask her when she lost her rigidity?
Where did you come all like
It was so
all
floppy.
floppy?
Floppy and floppy, baby.
No, we're going into the reps. Never mind.
There's
Wait,
did
where's
you-
the biscuits?
there's the title for this one, Loppy and Floppy.
There you go.
I lost my rigidity.
I lost my rigidity. The religion is very rigid. That's all I was pointing out.
And the vessel
There's
of the
nothing
pestle
else.
holds the brew that is true.
Aye!
Oh, brilliant. But
Yeah.
no, it's I think of it like a religion is acting through the perception of another. It's like it's like a recipe book. And I believe that some people do have that. They have religion, but what happens is that after a while they become confident with that in the way of the recipe book, and then they step outside of it. They make it their own, and they begin to follow their own experience, and then it becomes spiritual because it's their personal experience. And I think that's one of the things. It's wonderfully freeing. It is wonderfully freeing. I think this sense of, because like the amount of guilt people carry for things and worry about them, it's just like, and then you can turn around and like, I don't give a shit. It doesn't make any fucking sense anyway.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care. And everyone goes, oh, and it's like, none of you care either. You just care because I don't care. That's and
That's actually a conversation that I had with my mother a few weeks ago.
oh, really?
Yeah, we were talking about different things, and she kind of confided in me. I won't say confided, but she and I we don't talk about often. We don't talk about religion and things like that because she knows that I've left the church, and she didn't understand that for a long time. And I think she's finally coming to the point in her life where she's realizing that a lot of the things that we were taught in church and a lot of things that she grew up learning were not true, that it's all crap. But one of the things that we were talking about is I said, she carried a lot of guilt for a long time over decisions that I made, the decisions that my sister made. And because she was told that if your kids aren't following in the footsteps that you set for them, or they aren't following in the same religious choices, you fucked up as a parent. It's not on the kids. It's your fault as a parent if your kids are fuck ups. And she carried a lot of guilt for a long time because of decisions that we had made. It's almost like those religions expect you not to have any agency. You can't make your own choices. You have to follow our rules. And if you don't, or if your kids don't, then you failed as a parent. And that is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But she carried so much guilt for years over decisions that I made as an adult, as a fully functional adult who votes and pays taxes and everything else.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is nonsense. You should not be feeling this guilt.
Yeah.
But it was pushed on her by that religion.
It is crazy, isn't it? How it just, I find honestly, the thing is that to me it's become quite of a shock coming to this country, because religion is big. Like, religion is big. In England, there are those people who are still C of E, Church of England. And that means that on Sunday or on special times like Harvest Festival or whatever it is, they'll pop down the church, they'll sing a few hymns, they'll put some money in the charity box, and they'll all bugger off, and you won't see them again. And that's it. That's
Fair-
what C of
fair
E. That's it's become a tradition more
Right.
than anything else. But here it's not. It's a whole way of life.
Mm.
And if you
Yeah.
deviate, I know someone who also left the church a few years ago, and the one thing that they said to me is the people that they went to church with will not leave them alone. Will reach out
Oh,
to them and say,
really?
they will say, like, I'm worried about you. Are you okay? You know, you should. Why don't you come back to the church and we can talk about it and we can do. And they're like, no, I don't want to. I don't want to.
Yeah.
And it's hearing that myself, I think it's crazy.
It's
like,
creepy, actually.
It is, though, isn't it? Okay.
I was just going to ask your opinion on that situation. And are they asking out of a feeling of like, how are you doing? We used to be friends, or are they asking on you're going to hell? You're damned if you leave us. kind of feel.
It's honestly probably a bit of both.
Oh,
Because and I went through the exact same thing.
Mm.
So the church that I was a part of for a number of years as an adult, the church that I actually helped found,
mm,
we left and it dissolved, and it was bad. It was bad. There was a lot of negativity, and it's stuff that I'm still dealing with today, learning how abusive and narcissistic and gaslighting the leadership of that church was.
Yeah.
And so cutting them off was no issue.
yeah.
There was no love lost there. You know,
Yeah.
it was we're done. We're done.
Mhm.
But there were a few people who legitimately cared about me, about my spouse,
Yeah.
who we were very, very close to. And you know, they would reach out even after 2020, when we officially left the church.
Yeah.
They would occasionally reach out, and they would, say, some of them were understanding, because I would just come out and
Mhm.
say, listen, we're not part of the church anymore. We're not considering ourselves Christians anymore. We're going a different direction. And they would
Yeah.
say things like, well, I'm sorry to hear that, and that's disappointing, but we still love you, still care about you, whatever.
Okay.
And I feel like there may have been a part of that was sincere,
Mhm.
but I came to the realization that there is no way for a Christian to
Mm.
be in any sort of friendship, relationship, whatever, with a non-Christian, because it's against their religion to associate with non-Christians.
Yeah.
What?
I could not have a relationship with someone who is a Christian,
Mhm.
because in the back of their minds, no matter how close we were, how good friends we were, in the back of their minds, they're constantly thinking, this person's not a Christian, this person's going to hell, I have to fix that. And so there's the friendship or relationship or whatever would always be tainted with this
Wow.
overarching, yeah, we're friends, but you need to get saved. Yeah, we're friends, but you need to come back to church. Yeah, we're friends, but. Yeah, we're friends, but. And I eventually just cut off all
Right.
ties with
Yeah.
anyone. And to this day, I do not have friends that are Christians.
Mhm.
And I will not be friends with people who are Christian,
Mhm.
because I don't want that. I don't need that in my life. They would say things like, just so you know, we're praying for you. Don't. That is non-consensual. If
Yeah.
you wouldn't want me to light a candle and some incense and burn herbs for you, then don't
Mhm.
you dare pray for me, because it's the
Mhm.
same sort of energy exchange.
Yeah.
That is non-consensual.
Right.
One of the things that I work on in my wards is repelling Christian influence from my house. I don't want it. I don't want them anywhere near me. I don't want that
Right.
energy. Don't pray for me. Don't
Yeah.
talk about me to your God. Fuck your God. I don't want anything to do with him or you. Get out of here.
Yeah.
And so I don't want a war with Christians. I want to be left alone to do my thing.
To do your thing.
But they will not allow that to happen.
Yeah.
They want to.
They are insisting on a war
separate
against
side.
everything that's
Yeah.
not Christian.
Yeah.
And so we're left with a couple of options. We can either acquiesce to their demands, which is not going to happen, or we can fight back, because choosing not to fight against them is not an option, because they're going to continue to do their thing whether we want them to or not. So our only option is to put up some sort of defense to keep them away, repel them, and say, you're not welcome here, and I don't want you, I don't want that energy, I don't need that.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that they can't live and let live.
Yeah.
Right.
I think about, you give it between 50 and 80 years, and I should imagine that Christianity will not be as big as it once was. At least in numbers.
Yeah.
There's so many people, especially younger generation now, who have basically, they see the world around them. They see the world around them, and then they go, and someone in a pulpit is telling them all these things, and then they come out and they look around them. They're like, this is bullshit. Like, this contradicts everything I was just told in there, what I'm seeing right now, how I'm feeling, how I'm being treated. And so therefore they look out. I don't care what it is either. I don't care whether it's Buddhism or Taoism or Wicca or, you know, I don't care. As long as it's something else, because it gets you on the track. Because almost like those three, even, they still have flaws in some manner, but they still ask you to remain true to you, look inside you, and see what there is, what is beautiful, what is there to be loved, and what is there to be nurtured. Whereas in Christianity, it's not the same. It's almost like a hysterical illusion that I am afraid, and you are afraid, and we're all afraid in this room. So let's all speak to God together and agree that he is speaking to us. And then we won't be afraid anymore, because you'll believe it, and I'll see you believing it, and you'll see me believing it. You know? And it's like, what?
For some reason, I just got like when the Power Rangers all suited up in my head. Like the image of them, like
Captain Planet. Fire. Earth.
Like, they're all suiting up. I believe in you. Do you believe me? Yeah, I believe in you. Do you believe me?
Okay, let's go.
Yeah, right. Like,
Oh my God.
Yeah. But it's but you're right in what you say, because I am sure that there are many people who are Christian, who are delightful people, who are lovely people. There are people that have love, and that they don't follow strict Christian values. It doesn't mean, however, that under the doctrination of Christianity, they still are kind of blindsided by it. That's the problem. It's not even their fault, because for them, they pick and choose what is good, but it's still underneath this umbrella.
Yeah.
And it's that umbrella that causes the damage, not the individual in that instance.
Yeah.
It's sad.
It is sad.
There's I can liken it to we're gonna get super political here.
Oh, boy.
But you all can edit this out if it doesn't fit. It's fine. So there's the phrase ACAB, ACAB, all cops are bastards. And it took me a while to understand that, because in my life, I have known some police officers who were decent people. And what the way it was explained to me was the system that they are hired to enforce is broken. It is not fair. It is purposely geared towards, supporting cis white Christians, and it keeps everybody else down, particularly people of color. And so while the individual police officer may not be a bastard, they are signing on to enforce laws and work for a system
Mm,
that is from the top down horrible and broken.
mhm,
And so, in the same way, an individual Christian may not be a bad person, but their religion is poison.
Yeah.
And so,
right.
by continuing to participate in it, they are continuing to perpetuate that same spreading of that poison.
Mhm, mhm.
It is.
Sorry, go
No,
ahead.
go on.
I was just gonna ask, what advice would you have for someone interested in witchcraft who's deconstructing from a monotheistic religion?
I have notes on all these questions.
Oh,
I came so
beautiful.
prepared, but
Let's do it.
I'm literally going to read directly from my notes on this because I
Alright.
put a lot of thought into this.
Oh,
Okay.
lovely.
The first thing that I would
Mhm.
say is go slow.
Mm,
Above everything else,
mhm,
go slow. Do not try to do everything all at once.
mhm,
Deconstruction is a lifelong process. And the longer you go and the deeper you go, the more you begin to realize just how much of your entire existence was wrapped up in your religious beliefs.
mm,
Changing religions, leaving monotheism behind, particularly Christianity, is extremely difficult.
right.
Everything about you as a person is wrapped up in your beliefs because that's what they want. Your
Mm,
whole life is dictated by what the church teaches. It's not just your spirituality, but it's your political beliefs, your views on gender and sexuality, your views on race, your views on other religions, your views on work and career and finances is all tied to your religious beliefs when you're a Christian.
yeah.
Christianity is designed that way. It's designed to keep its adherents shackled and bound because that's what keeps butts in pews and dollars in offering plates. You
Mm,
do not have to pick a particular path or shackle yourself to a particular spirit or deity right out of the gate. You don't
mhm,
have to do those things at all if you don't want to, or if those things don't feel authentic to you. Some people who leave Christianity behind find the concept of connecting with a deity difficult, which
Mm.
makes sense when you consider the type of narcissistic and overly controlling relationship the Christian God has with his followers. So if you
mm,
don't want to connect to a deity right away or ever, that's completely valid.
Mm.
The second thing I would tell people is witchcraft isn't what you see on social media.
mm-mm,
It is extremely tempting to just start spending a ton of money on books and crystals and tarot decks and all the other metaphysical and esoteric ephemera, but it's not necessary. Not
mhm.
to say there's anything wrong with having those things. I am
I
sitting here
like shopping,
surrounded.
yeah.
I like things. I am very
Yeah.
maximal. I'm not a minimalist. Marie Kondo can kiss my ass. I am surrounded by books and tarot decks and crystals and herbs and all of the neat shit. However, it's not necessary.
Right.
Yeah.
They are not central to my craft. The tools that we use don't have to be fancy or expensive. A good
Mhm.
sharp pocket knife will do the same thing that a fancy athame will, and probably some a lot better, since it's
Mhm.
designed specifically to cut, whereas most athames are designed just to be props.
Mhm.
I think we've talked about this before. There's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with having aesthetic things, but because they can help to serve to put you in the proper mindset
Yeah.
Right.
for doing a working. But I don't want any of us to reach the point where we become so reliant on those things we can't perform our craft without them.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time thinking, what would my ancestors do when I'm approaching something? And the reality is, my ancestors didn't have access to the myriad of things that I do now. They
Mhm.
didn't have the luxury of going down the street and choosing from any number of metaphysical shops stocked with
Mhm.
herbs, crystals, cards, books, wands, brooms, any of that stuff. They had
Right.
to work hard to make sure we didn't have to face the same struggles they did.
Right.
And I honestly think that they would celebrate our freedom to practice our craft in relative safety,
Mhm.
but not at the expense of losing our connection with the things that the land around us provides. We
Yeah.
can't ever risk losing our connection to our cunning.
Yeah.
And the third thing I would say is read, read, read. And when you're done reading, read some more.
Some
Do your
more.
research, do your homework, and
Mhm.
fact check everything, especially if it's something you hear someone on the internet say.
Yep.
The internet is both our boon and our bane. It is
Mhm.
so easy to get all the information you could ever want to consume within a few clicks. It's also
Mhm.
easy to be swamped by misinformation very
Mhm.
quickly.
Yeah.
And it's always right around the corner. You
Yeah.
think you've found some decent information on the Norse pantheon, then boom, you're surrounded by alt-right, white nationalist, supremacist, neo-Nazi fuckwads.
Yeah.
And when it comes to research and reading, don't oversaturate yourself. Find a
Mhm.
handful of good resources and stick with them.
Yeah.
If they don't have answers to the question that you have, find sources that they recommend. It's your responsibility as a practitioner to be respectful and know what is and isn't safe or appropriate for you. You're
Yeah.
going to mess up. We
Yep.
all do, and that's
Mhm.
okay.
Yep.
What isn't okay is not learning from your mistakes.
Right.
Listen to those who have walked this path longer, but don't always take their word as fact. No one
Mhm.
is infallible.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Those were all great points.
It's fantastic. The point of that, we have spoken about that, the fucking up is
Mhm.
hugely important. And the thing is now, especially because of social media as well, a lot of people feel that they're not allowed to fuck up.
Mhm.
But fucking up is an integral part of how you learn your
Mhm.
craft. You will do something, you'll see someone do something, you went, I can do that, and you'll fuck it up. And then you'll realize, I did it like them, I didn't do it like me. And so you'll go back and you'll use your intuition. You may change it. You'll work within the limits or the boundaries of what
Yeah.
feels right to you. And then you get it right.
Yeah.
What is it that we was talking about? You know, that which you summon up, remember to forgive yourself,
Mm.
but remember that you also put it back down again. And the fact that you could put it back down again proves to you that you're ready. You got this. You can go. It gives you the confidence to continue.
Mhm.
Because that's what it is. You have to be a bit uncomfortable. You have to be a
Mhm.
little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah.
If you stay within this safe zone, especially, for instance, one of the big ones is astral travel.
Mm.
People, if you go on astral travel, I guarantee you, any kind of video, any kind of paper you see written on astral travel, be careful. It's dangerous. You don't want to end up in the wrong place. You don't. Do me a favor. Has anyone been rolled into a hospital? Was like, what's the matter? Well, she went astral traveling and she hasn't come back yet. No, that doesn't happen. It's yeah, you're gonna go to places that you might find a little bit out of depth. You might find a little bit scary. But at the same point, when that happens, you come straight back to your body because you feel scared, you're worried. And then, you learn, just like driving a car. You drive a car, you're like, holy shit, this is scary. Like, what am I doing? Oh God, it's really unnatural. You get the hang of it. But if you scare yourself and immediately like, right, I'm not doing that again, you're never gonna get that. You're never gonna learn. It's so important. I agree with you completely. It's so important. And that's one of the things that people are stopping people from doing nowadays.
Yeah.
Stopping people, like, you're not allowed to fuck up. Don't try and do this because you'll fuck it up. No, try and do it. Fuck it up. People say to me a lot on videos, why didn't you tell people about warnings on things? I said, because it's my fucking practice. It's my practice, not your practice. If you want to go and do, if I give you a warning or not, I'm not going to stop you from doing it.
Mm.
Go and do it.
Exactly.
Just go and do it. Don't ask my permission. I'm not an authority to give you permission. Just go and do it. If you fuck up, you've learned something.
Yeah.
That's, that I'm not there to hold anyone's hand. That's, never have been. But yeah, sorry. That really gets my goat, that, because
You really got going there. For
it
a
does, but
moment.
it does.
It
You
really drives him around the twist.
it does, it does. You and I have spoken about this though. When people are too afraid to do things,
Mm.
it's more annoying. I would rather have someone who keeps messing up,
Yeah.
because that means that they, you can't stop them. They're going to keep going. They're going to get it right. They're determined. Where someone who messes up and is like, I don't know, I don't want to do, then don't bother. Don't bother, because you're going to mess up. It's all about messing up.
That's the scientific method.
Yeah.
You're going to make mistakes, but you're going to learn from them, and then the next time, not to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird how we've had this. I think honestly, a lot of people in social media monopolize on that. They this idea of when they come, they just decide that certain things aren't allowed. Like we was talking yesterday about tarot cards, and how some people are saying now you have to be gifted tarot cards. It's almost like they try and monopolize on these things to become an authority on these things, and it's like, why? why? Like, it's let other people do what they want to do, and they're going to find their place within it, because it's a spiritual.
As long as you're
witchcraft
not
is a spiritual.
appropriating.
Yeah, no, but even if you are appropriating, someone's going to call you out on it. You're going to get educated on it. And then once again, it's up to you whether you have the option to be humble and say, I fucked up, I'm really sorry. Or you're going to bury your head in the sand and be like, you guys suck. You don't know what you're talking
I'm
about.
not gonna apologize for anything. And then
There've
that's how you
been
tank.
plenty of
Yeah.
practitioners online who have done that.
Yeah.
And they've been doing something, and someone from a community that is someone who's part of the community that practice belongs to
Yeah.
steps up and says, hey, just so you know, what you're doing is appropriation. This is part of something that's specific to our community. And they go, oh shit, and they don't do it again.
Yeah, they're like, oh, I'm really sorry about that.
You've made a mistake.
Yeah.
You learn from that.
Yeah.
It's like once you have the information, then you're responsible for it.
Yeah.
You know, I had this conversation with my sister. She was like, yeah, I bought this little kit and it's got Palo Santo and white sage. And I said, hey, just so you know, both of those materials are, number one, belong to practices that are specific to certain ethnic groups. And number two, have been over harvested to shit. So there are plenty of things that you can use that aren't Palo Santo and white sage.
Yeah.
Now, what she does with that information is up to her, and she'll have to be the one to deal with the fallout of that if she chooses to continue to use it. And nothing may happen, but the point is we want to be responsible practitioners as we do this.
Absolutely.
Definitely. And I think the thing is if we continue this, educating people on these things, it becomes the norm. It will get to the point where everyone knows this. Everyone, even getting into a craft of any kind, they're going to know this from the off because it becomes common knowledge.
Yeah.
And that's great. That's what we really should have done at the beginning, especially in the turn of the 60s through to the 70s, 80s, and the 90s especially. 90s is where cultural appropriation really took off in a big way. And, you know, those are the things that we should have been doing then, really.
Yeah.
But it was the 90s. We were really dumb and we didn't care. There was cocaine. So
we were all doing cocaine in the 90s. It was, I mean, I was like 6 years old, but still.
Yeah. No, it didn't stop you then. No, I mean, we all had fax machines, cocaine, we'd watch Friends. It was great.
While checking messages on our beeper and calling people from our bag phone.
Exactly. Yeah. What do you find triggering that is reminiscent of past experiences in a toxic religious atmosphere?
I think one of the biggest things is probably when certain people or certain groups insist on there being one true way to do something. Like there's one way to perform a task or one way to cast a certain spell or only one way to connect with this deity or spirit. Yeah. And that just all smacks of Christian theology. Yeah. Christianity hinges on the idea that there's one true way to achieve salvation and eternal life. And if that fails, the whole fucking thing falls apart. Yeah. We know that there are as many ways to practice magic as there are witches who practice it. And this idea kind of goes along with the insistence on the part of witches that their tradition is older, which makes it somehow more authentic. And something that I first heard Elwyn say, and it just really just stuck with me, was antiquity does not equal authenticity. And honestly, I think that road goes both ways. Yeah. Just because a practice is ancient doesn't make it the best way to do something. On the other side of that, just because a practice isn't ancient doesn't make it wrong either. Yeah. I think about particularly, so like an example of this would be the idea of a horned god. Yeah. All throughout ancient history. I think Margaret Murray said that the horned god had been around since the Paleolithic. Yeah. And one of the I wrote this down. One of the oldest depictions of the horned god is the sorcerer from the caves at Les Trois Frères, which is around 13,000 BCE. Yeah. By contrast of that, the oldest known depiction of Cernunnos is at Val Calmonica, which is about circa 400 BCE, some 1,000 years after the the sorcerer from Trois Frères. And then
Mm.
there's the Gundestrup Cauldron, which is from the 1st century CE, which by comparison makes it way more recent.
Mm.
Now, most pagans today would not hesitate to call Cernunnos a god.
Mhm.
And he's relatively, and he's relatively to us today, he's ancient.
Mhm.
But worship of any deity has to start at some point, has to have a beginning point.
Mhm.
There were probably people in the, the centuries BCE who were like, Cernunnos, who is Cernunnos? I've never heard of this god. I'm not going to worship a god I've never heard of.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that he wasn't a god.
Yeah.
There's Herne, who is
Mhm.
another horn god who didn't come around till the 1500s, and he was mentioned in The Merry Wives of Windsor by Shakespeare.
Yeah.
That was his first mention.
Mhm.
It doesn't make him any less of a deity.
Yeah.
The same thing goes with Ellen of the Ways, who is
Yeah.
again relatively recent, and not everybody believes in Ellen of the Ways. But my point is, witchcraft and paganism have to be adaptable.
Mhm.
The gods, the deities, the spirits, they have agency in this world. They're able to change and adjust with the times. They have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our connections with them change constantly.
Hmm.
I would say that it's probably frowned upon in most places today to sacrifice your neighbor to the old ones.
Shoot.
Yeah.
Might want to sometimes, but it's probably not a good idea.
Mhm.
But we're not the same people or
Yeah.
same society that we were 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We're not as reliant on the gods for
Right.
producing a bountiful harvest or directing a bad storm away from our grouping of wattle and daub huts. We're
Mhm.
still calling on them for the same sort of things, but we're not at that level.
Right.
And Christianity has put itself up as a be all, end all, never changing, never adapting thing.
Mm.
They like to quote the passage from the Bible where it says, God says, I am the same yesterday, today, and forever, or I am the Lord, I changeth not. And they
Mhm.
use that as an excuse to not adapt and change to the times. And we can't allow ourselves to get stuck in the same ruts that they're in. And part
Mhm.
of that is making sure that we're not insisting on there's only one certain way to do things. And if you don't do it this one way, then you're not doing it right. Like,
Yeah.
fuck
Yeah.
that. Fuck that.
Honestly, that's bullshit. That God says that He was the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Because I mean, look at the Old Testament. Guy had a chip on his shoulder. Guy had some stuff he needed to work out. Yeah.
Okay. So my question for Bearded Baldy
Yeah. Yeah.
is, I was thinking when you're talking about the definitions of religion and spirituality, how you feel about Christian witches and how their practice then works.
Yeah, just stir the pot. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just remind you, Amanda, that those who stir the shit pot have to lick the spoon. But I will answer your question, and it's
Really?
a hot take
What do you feel about
about Christian witches.
Christian witches?
I don't think it's a thing. So
I agree with you, but I want to see if it's the same reason that because I honestly would say that is just folk witchcraft.
I think there's a difference.
Right.
I actually wrote this down. Let me see if I can find where I wrote it down, because I put this was actually, funny enough, part of my answer to question 5.
Oh, right.
What have you found problematic through this experience of leaving the church and developing yourself in your spiritual journey?
Yeah.
Because the answer to that question, the short answer to that question is Christian influence.
Yeah.
In modern witchcraft.
Yeah.
But basically, I don't think Christian witches exist. And you have said numerous times, and I believe I agree with you 100%, that witchcraft is a what's the word that you use? It's a not abomination, but
Blasphemy.
yes, that's it. Witchcraft is blasphemous.
Yeah.
By its very nature.
Yeah.
And so it's completely against it goes completely against the Bible and Christian beliefs. I actually wrote this down. This is my hot take on this, but I don't believe in Christian witches. I don't think such a thing exists. And the reason that I say is because witchcraft, by its very definition and existence, goes against Christian beliefs. Now, I don't give a flying fuck about their beliefs or what they want, but that doesn't mean I can just stroll up into a church and say, I'm a Christian witch and you have to accept me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Likewise, I don't have to accept strolling up into my spiritual domain and saying, I'm a Christian witch, you have to accept me, because I don't and I won't.
Yeah.
Christian witches don't exist. It's not possible. You can say you're a Christian witch all you want to, and you can pray to the Christian God all you like, but the fact of the matter is, if you practice witchcraft, you are not a Christian. According to their Bible and according to their beliefs, you're not one of them. And the wider version of that is, for all they are and aren't, because they are a religion, because it is a set of doctrinal beliefs, Christians get to decide what is and isn't Christian, and what you can and can't do, and what you have to do to be a Christian.
Yeah.
And this is the same. I've had this conversation with queer people. As a queer person, I will never be accepted by the Christians because my innate queerness goes against their religious beliefs.
Yeah.
There's this big thing, and I keep seeing it pop up on different parts of social media where people are trying to tell Christians, oh, that word in your Bible doesn't mean homosexual, it means pedophile. First of all, there's two different passages, one in the Old Testament, one in the New Testament. And I'm not going to get into, well, I mean, I probably eventually will get into the idea that the entire Old Testament is actually the holy book of another religion that is a ethnic religion and closed practice that the Christians shouldn't even be touching.
Yeah.
But it is, the word is homosexual. That viral video about it not being homosexual is not true. The word is homosexual, but the point is, it doesn't matter. Christians believe that being gay is wrong and it's a sin. According to Christianity, according to their doctrine and their theology, you cannot be a Christian and continue to live a life of sin. You are a sinful person. You are going to make mistakes, but constantly living in a sinful lifestyle means you're not a Christian. And so to them, being gay is a sinful lifestyle. So you cannot be, in their eyes, you cannot be gay and be a Christian. In the same way, witchcraft is a sinful lifestyle. Their Bible says, suffer not the witch to live. There are Christians out there, you've probably seen the videos, where there are pastors who are saying that homosexuality is a disease and that queer people should be drug out into the street and shot.
Yeah.
And they would do the same thing with witches if they could get away with it.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I refuse to believe in Christian witchcraft because it's bullshit.
Yeah.
The idea of you somehow doing witchcraft, which is against the Bible, which is Christians' whole thing, and where every rule and belief system of their entire doctrine and theology comes from, says that this is wrong. They get to decide what it takes to be a Christian. You know, in this, like I was talking about earlier with Shinto leadership and their high priests or whatever, I can't think of the name, but the people who run the organized Shinto religion, they get to decide what authentic real Shinto is and isn't, and they get to set those rituals and those other things. In the same way, Christians get to decide what is and isn't Christian. And so if Christians say you can't be gay and be a Christian, then that's it. If they say you can't practice witchcraft and be a Christian, then that's it. You know, people want to say, well, I'm a Christian and I practice witchcraft. No, I'm sorry. You're either one or the other. You cannot be both. And I would say, and honestly, I would say the same thing to any queer person. I'm a queer Christian. No, you're not. You're either queer or you're a Christian. You cannot be both. Not according to the Christian doctrine. And again, this is one of those things where we could have a whole other podcast just on this, but this whole idea, and I see this all the time. Oh, Jesus preached love, and Jesus preached acceptance, and Jesus preached love thy neighbor and everyone. No, he fucking didn't.
Mm.
If you look at for just a minute, if we take if we suspend our disbelief, and we pretend that just for a second Jesus existed and he said all the things that he said in the New Testament.
Mm-hmm.
He was a Jewish apocalyptic preacher who believed that the literal end of the world was coming in his lifetime. He was preaching to the Jewish people of that day, and everything he said was directed toward them. He was a Jewish preacher for the Jewish people. He was not trying to create a new religion. Hold on. I'll quote this directly. The book of Matthew, because I want to get it right.
Mhm.
Book of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 17. Jesus says, "Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, not one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law till all be fulfilled. Whosoever therefore shall break one of the least of these commandments and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven." So he's literally telling the people, if you want to be in the kingdom of heaven and you want to be called great, you need to follow the Old Testament law. There's this whole big thing in modern Christianity that says Jesus condemned the law and he rebuked the law and he came to do away with it. His own words say different.
Yeah.
You have to read, this is a religious text. You have to read it in its religious context.
Yeah.
Right.
I hate to say it this way because I heard this from a Christian preacher, but it's actual text without context is subtext.
Yeah.
If you don't read the scripture or the holy book or whatever it is in the context and through the lens of the people who wrote it and the way they meant it to be read, you are missing the actual point of what's being said.
Yeah.
Christians love to put up the book of Revelation as this big, great end of the world. The whole book of Revelation is written about the Roman Empire, and it's written in metaphor because it was illegal at the time to speak out against the Roman Empire.
Right.
The great beast 666, and scholars and historians have come to this agreement. This is not something somebody made up. The great beast 666 was Caesar Nero.
Yeah.
Everything in the book of Revelation was either already happened or was metaphor. It was never meant to be taken literal, and it was never meant to be end of the world. Like I said, Jesus was an apocalyptic preacher who thought the end of the world was coming in his lifetime, which is why he said to his followers, "There are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the kingdom coming." They literally thought that the end of the world was coming in their lifetime, and he was not the only one. This was a relatively popular outlook for some people.
Yeah.
But Jesus was a Jewish rabbi speaking to Jewish people and teaching them the Jewish law. That's the context that has to be looked into. And so when the book says you can't be this and this, we don't get to say to them what they believe, and they don't get to say to us what we believe.
Right.
So no, I don't. That's my very long, drawn out way of saying no. Christian witchcraft is bullshit.
Fantastic. No, I'm with you there. You can't have the best of both worlds just to make yourself feel better because a part of you feels guilty for doing witchcraft because you were originally Christian. That's what it is. It's the same as though you have people who are middle class white people who basically support by the actions of their own life this kind of completely whitewashed view of their life that they have, which is basically white supremacism in the modern age that we live in, and yet they set themselves apart from it. They are part of it, but they set themselves, no, I'm different from that, I'm not that. And that's how that they see themselves. They have core traditional values, but they're a good person. They believe that love is love and all these other things, but core traditional values, you can have both. No, you can't have both because it's just there to make you feel better. Pick one or the other. Pick your potato, So no, I do agree with you in that sense. But I think it's similar to that of when we look at folk magic in the past, primarily Christian or Catholicism.
Mhm.
Very much the same. It was people's belief. They just took the belief of the time, their faith, and kind of infused it into witchcraft.
Yeah.
Became that. But as we've discussed before, why do that? I think one of the main reasons why to do that is to disguise your working. You disguise your working because if you didn't have a flavor of your Christianity behind your witchcraft,
Yeah.
people would not come to you. People would feel uncomfortable coming to
Yeah.
you, and people would probably tell on you, and
Mhm.
that would get you in a lot of trouble.
Oh yeah.
So it was very important to do that, and it's happened. It carried on. It carried over, and this is how we have this, especially during the Victorian period, where this thing of spiritualism came about, because spiritualism, divination in the Bible is a sin. Is a sin. Go to hell for it. And so therefore spiritualism was something different, because spiritualism was people talking to God. It was talking to those who have gone, who are closer to God. And so therefore, how could it possibly be bad? And it's just a way of putting, once again, the same thing, a twist on it, which has this, like the old-fashioned spiritualists were very religious people for that reason. There's the way of doing one thing but feeling good about it, even though you
Yeah.
were taught that you shouldn't. I think many of us have got past that nowadays. We've come far enough to realize that I don't have to feel fucking guilty because someone said in a fucking book.
I want to put a caveat here, and this is very important.
Yeah.
When I talk about Christian witches, and I talk about the blending and the syncretism of Christianity and any sort of folk tradition or any other religious belief,
Yeah.
I am not talking about any ethnic religions that are part or blended of Christianity. There are Italian folk Catholics, Haitian Vodou practitioners. A lot of these religions, these ethnic religions, do have elements of Christianity and Catholicism in them.
Yeah.
I want to make it very clear to anyone listening or watching this video that I am not talking about those religions.
Yeah.
As a white person, I would never in a million years attempt to tell anyone who is part of any ethnic religion what they can and can't do, what they can and can't practice, or what they will and won't blend. That is, they have their practices that I think are beautiful.
Yeah.
And I respect them and admire them from afar, and I would never in a gazillion years try to tell any of them what to do. I am talking about white American Christians.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So I wanted to make that abundantly clear.
I think that's a great distinction.
It is a good.
Yeah. Thank you.
The other thing is, and you and I have talked about this before, what you were just saying about the folk witches from a few generations ago, putting these Christian trappings into their craft to make people comfortable.
Yeah.
It is my personal belief that if our ancestors, even going back just to my grandmother or great grandmothers, as recently as just a couple of generations ago, we know so much more about the history of Christianity now than they did. And we have a greater knowledge of the damage that religion has done and continues to do. I think that if that knowledge was held by those people, then a lot of what we see in folkcraft and the blending of Christianity and witchcraft would be very, very, very different.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, it would. We overlook that people are primarily very cut off. Their social circles and their worlds were very small, comparatively to today, and that which they were exposed to was limited. And their faith was an integral part. Why? Because their parents did it. They were brought up with it. And so therefore there was no reason to disbelieve it. It was always there, like the air you breathe. And so there was also a lot of stuff to be afraid of. If you were to have kids and you had a few kids, there's almost a certainty that you were going to lose one of them. So you prayed that you didn't. And God was merciful in this way, and you was a good Christian person. So therefore, you know, what we know now, modern medicine, science, philosophy, all these things that were around still, but we're exposed to it. It's at our fingertips. I agree with you. It would, if they were here today and they experienced the world, it would be a massive shock for them, but they would eventually come to that same conclusion that there is so much now. It might be quite terrible for them, actually, but I think they would come to the same conclusion.
Yeah.
But something that I feel very strongly about is we have these traditions of folkcraft and Christianity, and they're blended together, and we continue to do it because it's old, because this is how we've always done it. But I think that it's time for us and the younger generations of people who are in these folk traditions to create new traditions that are separate and divorced from this Christian influence. It's not going to take off right now, but if we start now, then maybe 100 years from now, the folk traditions of that time will have nothing to do with Christianity.
Yeah.
Because we see the damage and toxicity that is inherent in that religious structure. And we said, we're done with that. We don't want anything else to do with that. We want to have something that is completely separate from their toxic influence.
Is the tradition. Tradition is such a dangerous thing because we end up doing things and we don't even know why we're doing it. And if you do that in witchcraft, then what the hell are you doing? You can't just do something and you're not sure why you're doing it in witchcraft. Everything is about reason, and there is reason and intent in everything you're doing in practice. And so therefore it's like, well, why are you doing that? I don't know. It's just the way it's always been done. It becomes dangerous. That's how religion starts. It's very much in the way I think also is that what you said there in the way of almost a movement to change parts of Christianization within folk magic. Sure. But also what I think is understanding why people did things. We could do the greatest inspiration to you, and what resources do you feel shaped your journey?
I think that would be a nice question to end on, if that's okay with you.
The greatest inspiration besides you guys?
No.
No, I mean, I'm serious.
Oh, thank you.
But not me.
This was this was a tough question. Because there's not been like one person that I've looked through and going, yep, that's it. That's the goal. I'm doing exactly what this person, because like you were saying, there's no, if I just copy things that other people are doing, it's not my own, and it's not going to work. So I've always been the type of person to where I want to find a few really good, solid, reliable, and trustable resources and go off of what they say or what they recommend. There's no, I don't believe that any person or any source is completely infallible. And so I always take things with a grain of salt. And then, I'm always looking to say, okay, how can I adapt this for my own practice? So that's what I kind of do. I take ideas or processes or whatever from people that I have found to be trustworthy sources, and then I adapt it to things that are around me. And kind of going counter to everything I've said about Christian influence, but we've been talking about Christian influence coming from our ancestors versus Christian influence today. I do look a lot to what my ancestors would have done, both Appalachian ancestors, and then recently finding out that my family is mostly from Northern England. And although those are very similar practices because these people brought their practices with them, they did adapt as they came over to this country. So kind of looking at what they did and then adapting it to today and what I have available to me and what feels most comfortable for me and what I find works the best for me. So that's kind of where I do, as far as like actual, I look at really trusted authors like Jim McGarry, Roger Horn, Nigel Pearson, Because you've got people like Jim McGarry and Nigel Pearson for the British folk craft, and then I can get Corey Hutchison is another one for American folk craft that I really like what he does. His book, New World Witchery, is a really great resource. It's not so much a it's very historical in its approach. He talks about a lot of different practices and where they came from, and Corey is very quick to quote other good resources. So if he mentions someone, I know that that's a reliable resource. Or at least more reliable than, that doesn't always work, as we have found. But for the most part, I find a few trusted resources, and then I will look to what they say for a certain topic, or if they don't cover something specific, I'll look for someone they recommend. That's I try not to saturate the pool with too much, because then the waters get muddied, and it's real easy to get lost in the sauce.
You got the shit spoon in there. It's a fucking.
Well, that's your fault. You're the one who was stirring the pot.
Like, throughout the whole time of our marriage, I don't know how many times a year I've said that. I've quoted it, and then she's like, "Wow, I've never heard that." And I'm literally like, "Fuck you! You clearly never listen to anything I say."
Amanda, you know that there is a second half to the phrase "curiosity killed the cat," right?
No, is there?
Yeah, but satisfaction brought it back. Curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought it back.
So be curious is what that actually means.
No, the point is the cat has 9 lives, so it may have killed the cat, but it sainted its curiosity, and the satisfaction is what brought it back, giving it its extra lives. For fuck's sake!
How about Jack of all trades?
I don't know.
Jack of all trades, master of none, but better than being a master of one.
Oh.
Look at you! You never even heard of Jack of all trades, have you?
No, I've heard of Jack of all trades. Yeah. But no, I didn't know these had second parts to them. This is very enlightening.
About built like a brick shit house.
Well, there you have it, my friends. Is there anything else you want to promote or share?
Well, now that you mention it, actually, yes. So I have, after taking some counsel and some nudging from certain people, some of them named Elwin and Amanda, I have officially started my own sort of spiritual, witchy, fucking hate that word, but there it is, social media presence.
Yay!
You can find me on TikTok and Instagram as DogwoodandDeadNettle, all one word. There is nothing there right now because I literally just started it. But I have some ideas for a few posts. I've got a couple of drafts already saved on the TikTok. Going to be talking a little bit. It's going to be more educational than anything else. It's going to kind of be a way for me to document my educational journey as I continue down this path. So if, like we were talking about earlier, you want to watch somebody fuck up and get something wrong, follow that, because I'm probably going to fuck some shit up. But I have goals eventually to start a YouTube channel as well. And maybe even my own podcast.
Hey, you have to invite us on. What's that?
Absolutely. That was me trying to come. That was me trying to come up with a snarky response, and my brain wasn't firing fast enough.
Like, oh, dang, we must have.
Honestly, I was like, oh, rejection. Honestly, that was for that moment. I was like, rejection.
But yeah, so there you go. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok as DogwoodandDeadNettle.
Beautiful.
Excellent. Awesome.
Awesome. You can see that in the show notes, you guys. So
Yeah, you see
we'll
in
have
the
the
show
links
notes.
there.
Go follow.
Yeah.
Go follow. I'm going to go follow.
I'm gonna follow.
No,
I'm gonna
you're
follow
not allowed to
first.
You fucking better.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you ever so much.
You can find us on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook as the Antlered Crown, or on YouTube as Elwyn the Witch.
I offer a variety of readings, including bone readings, tarot, medium connection, and deity guidance, as well as spiritual consultations, which are done live and scheduled via Zoom. I also do custom merchandise, all of which you can find on the website, theantlercrown.com.
You can also join our community on Patreon. Get access to the Discord server, group meetings, one-on-ones with Elwyn, tutorials, discounts, and other goodies, depending on the tier level you choose.
Speaking of which, here is our Antler Crown patron shout-out.
Jasmine,
Rachel,
Susanna,
Michelle,
Nixie,
Randy,
Tara.
Mel. That was lovely.
was
That was
beautiful.
really good.
You're even playing that.
Yeah, fantastic. Right, next time we'll be talking about paganism in witchcraft.
And always remember,
Tip your witch, bitch.
bye-bye.
Bye.